God. I've got to go tell Brandon. Oh, my interdimensional coat! Brandon!
How are you at my house?
We're not in your house.
What?
Brandon.
Huh?
Brandon, you just fell asleep on me.
Yeah.
I was telling you, the Underworld Saga's out.
Cool.
The Underworld Saga's out! So it's finally here. The closing to Act 1. Some might say it is the end of an era, and some might say it's only the beginning. So maybe we aren't quite as dramatic and serious as the saga would require of us, but it has to be said, Jorge Rivera-Herrans and his gang of talented Greek characters went above and beyond the hype built for this saga. Epic the Musical is quite talented at doing the whole calm before the storm idea, with the whole rising and falling tension way back as far as Open Arms, setting that calm tone before the Cyclops saga tears that all apart. And similarly in the Ocean saga, we had Luck Runs Out and Keep Your Friends Close as that sort of calmer mood, followed by Ruthlessness tearing that apart. And then we have the Circe saga as a whole being relatively calm considering what's come beforehand, with the fight between Odysseus and Circe being more of a fight of their minds rather than a physical one. And of course, it even leaves time for Hermes to faff about for an entire song also. But the entire Circe saga, while that being the calm, is then torn apart as we head down into the Underworld Saga. With each of the previous sagas, you could sort of pick out which songs were better than others, and everyone had their favourites. But in this saga, I don't think that there is a single one I can pick out of the three that is better than the others. I mean, Jorge made quality over quantity with this one because all three of the songs hit in a different way perfectly. An absolutely exquisite way to end off Act 1. But the question still remains, how does he do it? Well, let's take a trip into the underworld, shall we? From the moment Circe had mentioned the underworld, we were introduced to this musical idea of this haunting chorus, which now is front and center, as you can hear the sound of the ship groaning as it travels through these calm, almost eerily still water, in contrast to that we saw in the Ocean Saga with storms bashing the ship left and right in the brass section. Now it is just voices, because all that Odysseus can hear are screams. Odysseus and his crew will have to continue on with severe caution and having to keep their minds sharp, as nothing here is as it seems. Hence why this song begins with Odysseus's cunning on the electric guitar, but it is in that slower, more cautious tempo, similar to how we heard when he approached Circe for the first time.
Watching the listening party hosted by Jay.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Epic the Underworld Saga listening party.
We are shown the first animatic of this release, made by the wonderfully talented Scylla Draws. This animatic opens up on an establishing shot of Odysseus aboard his new ship that he got from the island of Calypso, according to Homer's Odyssey. On the left side of the screen, with Odysseus looking down into the water. Cutting into a medium shot of our main boy with Eurylochus over his shoulder, we get a wonderful pull focus following Odysseus' eyeline, now focused on Eurylochus. We see Eurylochus coddling himself, clearly struck with fear as he turns to his captain, who is holding his head in his hands. And we get this very well done panning close-up shot as Odysseus is lost in his own fears and negative headspace. Finally taking his hands off of his ears as we get this JoJo-like colour palette shift, showing that now we're in the underworld. As Odysseus turns to look over his shoulder at the voices we now hear, we are met with another establishing shot. This time we see Odysseus and the ship on the right-hand side of the screen, which, if you didn't know, holds a lot of symbolism. In film, while not technically a rule, you often find that good aligned characters move from left to right of the screen, like the first establishing shot of this animatic. And badly aligned characters move from right to left, like this current shot, showing that when Odysseus is presented with the consequences of his own actions, he finds it hard to justify everything he's done. The last thing I want to mention about this animatic is just how cool the depiction of the river Styx is. Having Odysseus's dead crew members floating on its upside down surface, clawing at him below, and having their movements mimic the human body's natural response to drowning, it sends shivers up my spine. It's just so well thought out and horrifying.
Navigating through the screams, Odysseus sings about how he is losing his mind and is plagued by nightmares as he hears the voices of his dead crewmates, and the guilt behind him crawls up along his spine. We hear the piano from Ruthlessness as his old dead crewmates cry out the 558 men that died under his command, as they question why did he let the Cyclops live when ruthlessness is mercy. And as they ask this question, we are also simultaneously hit by the lyrics that we have from Just a Man and from Ruthlessness, as Odysseus is plagued by thoughts from the infant that he threw from the wall that night in Troy. His focus begins to falter as he can no longer cope with all of these men crying out for him. And then the music calms as he is met face to face with someone he hasn't seen in a very long time. Polites.
The Polites half of Mercy's animatic is truly gorgeous. We open with the back of Polites' head as he's facing away from the camera and Odysseus, linking this moment to the line, "Whatever we're facing will be fine if we're leading from the heart," which is the message Polites has been trying to teach Odysseus from the start. However, to juxtapose this, Odysseus is animated smaller in frame, looking up at Polites and his ideals, showing that he doesn't feel like he's on the same level as Polites. But as the song and the animatic go on, we see more and more of Polites as the camera zooms out, which is showing that Odysseus is beginning to remember his friend's teachings, and Polites is taking up more and more of his mind. This idea is pushed even more as we cut back to a close-up of Odysseus, now facing level with Polites and being even larger on screen. And it's after this point in the animatic we begin to zoom back into Polites as he turns to his friend, perhaps showing that after everything, he still accepts his friend and reminds him to greet the world with open arms.
We knew this moment was inevitable, and the rendition that is given of Open Arms by Stephen Dookie is absolutely heart-wrenching and could bring absolutely anyone to tears, but nuh-uh, not us. We don't cry on camera, right, Brandon? Then the double whammy is had as we hear this beautiful piano sound as an unfamiliar voice is heard, one that you might mistake to be Penelope's, but we don't hear her usual strings being played. Instead, we hear Odysseus' theme played on the piano in minor, as it is revealed that it is Odysseus' mom that's singing.
Mom?
And also, to make it even greater, that is Jorge's mother singing. Like, his actual mom. It's brilliant! However, the fact of the matter is, in Odysseus' 12 long years of venturing and fighting, he missed his mother's passing back home, who had been waiting for him all this time. And they've reunited here, in the underworld. Okay, maybe we both cry on camera.
This animatic ruined me. And hopefully everyone else, because I don't want to be alone in these feelings. This animatic is lovingly brought to us by the wonderful Mercy once again. Though, as a point, this is not technically animated, as it is just one still image that is cut and zoomed via editing to give the illusion of animation. However, that doesn't make this animatic any less beautiful than any of the others. Cutting back and forth between Odysseus and his mum, who, by the way, is sat in the coolest fucking rocking chair I've ever seen, we get these wonderfully composed medium shots of both of them sat on either side of the screen with just so much open space. It just perfectly symbolizes all the unspoken emotions in this moment. All the longing and sorrow that they both feel. The distance that this journey has created between them both. Fuck. Yeah, I'm gonna go and cry now. God, I probably look like a fucking tomato.
But there's no time for tears, as all Odysseus hears once again are screams as it kicks back into full gear. The song is rounded off by absolute belter vocals from Jorge and the chorus of soldiers he still has alive with him. At long last, after struggling for what seems like an eternity through the river Styx, they finally find him. Odysseus is met with the prophet, Tiresias. Jorge makes the very interesting choice to portray Tiresias as this younger man than anyone would have imagined, this person who resides in the underworld, who can see across all of time, all possibilities, all at once. He's an old, ancient man, but he chooses not to show it, as he has the power to do so down here in the underworld. Also, he is beautifully voiced by the talented masonolshavsky. So the prophet, to the rhythm of a waltz, he begins yapping to Odysseus about how he can see the past and future events of a betrayal, of a sacrifice of man, people caught in a bad romance, the whole shebang. Then he begins saying that he sees a possibility where he helps Odysseus come home, but it's not this one. Odysseus' heart drops, along with the descending strings that we hear, thinking his journey was all for naught. And when looking for answers, Tiresias continues with his riddles. Odysseus begins to get increasingly impatient, and eventually turns into an angry owl, as the prophet mentions that there is a man with his wife who is led by a trail of bodies behind him.
I see a song of past romance.
On the animatic side, we have an incredibly well-crafted piece from ainhoa Velasco. This animatic starts out with an over-the-shoulder shot of the prophet as Odysseus approaches. We then cut to a cowboy shot of the Force Ghost, panning around, similarly to Cilia Draw's animatic. But unlike Odysseus in that panning motion, the prophet turns away from the camera and Odysseus as he talks about the world in which he helps Odysseus get home, eventually turning to face Odysseus to tell him that this isn't that world. The constant movement in this animatic really helps express this floaty, almost otherworldly presence that is the prophet. And every scene and every frame having something that moves, whether it's the characters or even the scenery itself, really helps sell this feeling. Another thing I noticed, though it may not be intentional, is that in this animatic, Odysseus pushes and moves through the scenery/background, whereas the scenery follows the prophet and moves along with the prophet's movements. It might just be a coincidence, but it works so well for the song and the feeling of the animatic. The second half of this animatic comes after the angry owl, and to my delight, was released alongside the concept video that was used as reference to make it. Watching through the concept video, we can see the moments that inspired this amazing animatic. We start off by seeing an Attack on Titan spoiler from the final episode of Season 4, which inspired the direct point that the prophet does towards Odysseus. That was the stupidest thing I've ever done. Cutting to our main boy's reaction face, we get to see another shot taken from Attack on Titan. This time, Season 2, Episode 6, where we get to see the pure fear upon Odysseus' face, before cutting into his eye to emphasize the fear that has crawled up his spine, now knowing that he isn't who he is supposed to be. The reference for this moment was taken from the Demon Slayer movie Mugen Train, but that moment is spoilers, so I'll be sure not to say anything else about that. And just to quickly get through the other screenshots in the concept video, we have a clip from Hunter x Hunter, another clip from Attack on Titan with a screenshot of the artwork of the Wall of Fire card from Magic the Gathering's 2015 core set, another screenshot from Attack on Titan, and the last two are very hard to find the origins from. One is way too small for me to actually be able to search anything from it, though I can tell it's a clip from some anime. And the other, oh my fucking god, the other. I searched for hours to try find the origins of this artwork. And the best I could find for a page of this image is from a website known as Hero Page. It's posted under a profile picture account that specifically collects sad anime artwork. So unfortunately, I couldn't find the original image or artist. Then again, it could also be AI generated, so I'm not 100% sure. And now that we've got all that out of the way, I just want to say that this animation is beautiful. The colors, the artwork, the motion. How the animatic ends with all the light fading from the cave, leaving Odysseus alone. Fuck, it's just so good!
As Tiresias' vocals kick back in, we begin to start to read between the lines as we realize that all these metaphors that he's throwing out there is quite simply telling Odysseus if he is to make it back home with all of his crew, he's going to have to change who he is. He's going to change from a man to a monster.
I am the monster, rah rah rah.
Sean, this is a serious saga. Play the real one.
If you were to ask me how musicals like to end their first act, I'd say, give me all the characters that have appeared so far, cram them into one song so that they can all hit their motifs like Hamilton and Les Mis. Or I'd tell them to give the main character a solo number that's telling the audience how they've changed and give them a sneak peek into the next act, like Defying Gravity from Wicked. Or I'd tell them to, sing Deo from Beetlejuice, just do it for the laughs. Technically, Jorge does all three.
I am the monster, rah rah rah.
Okay. I'll stop. But anyways, as Tiresias has shattered Odysseus' self-image by telling him that if he is going to make it back home, he has to completely change who he is and what he's been doing completely, everything that has happened and been taught and learned by Odysseus throughout the entire act is culminated into this one song. He's kept thinking about the Cyclops, Poseidon, Circe, about how they do what they do and yet continue on with their life as normal, as if nothing wrong has been done at all. But then he looks inwards at himself, that he too in Troy, in order to ensure that him and his soldiers won that battle decisively. And he thinks about how many people has he killed, including that infant that he tossed from the wall. And yet now he decides to feign mercy to those while he's traveling back home? Now that he's surrounded by the 558 men and their souls which he led to death, which he might as well have just killed himself due to the kindness that he had shown to his enemies, he has lost so many allies and so much time that his mother has passed away from a broken heart in his absence. And who knows how long it'll be until Penelope and Telemachus might reach the same fate. In his attempts to uphold these shaky morals that not even he can make sense of, he has lost his best friend, his mother, so many men, and even his mentor Athena had abandoned him because of his behavior. His mind races with all of these facts, as we know that Odysseus is inevitably going to come to the conclusion that Jorge has been whispering in our ears throughout the entirety of the musical thus far. He has been a poor leader, letting his own emotions get in the way just so he can be satisfied with his own actions, regardless of how many of his allies have to die in order so that his enemies can live.
Captain, why would you let the Cyclops live when ruthlessness is mercy?
This life may be amazing when you greet it with open arms, but what's the point if you can't even live that life? There are people waiting at home for Odysseus, Penelope and Telemachus are waiting, and they might be dead by the time he arrives if he takes any longer, if he shows any more mercy that he cannot afford to. All this is to try to reconcile and redeem himself for what he did that night in Troy. Well, he's about to tell us exactly how he feels about hucking another infant off a wall if it means that they can come back alive. There is something primal that activates in my mind when I hear monster kick into the final chorus. Odysseus must become the monster for the sake of his crew and his family. This isn't just about him anymore. He has a sacrifice to make, and it's about damn time that he's made it. What a payoff to Act 1. Culminating every theme of ruthlessness and becoming a monster into a finale that, if I were to see live, would leave me stunned in my seat until the end of intermission. Hell, these songs are going to keep me stunned until the next saga releases.
So, Monster actually has 3 video/animation sections. The first being our one and only live action for this release. We have Jorge in a dark room with hard light hitting the right hand side of his face, creating these deep, long shadows over on the left hand side, making it look, well, dramatic. Though, it does also look like he may or may not be a poor boy from a poor family. The next animatic we see is from the incredibly talented Annie Flammer, as we get the trifecta of panning around a character in this saga, as we pan around Odysseus going from facing us and looking ashamed to facing his past moments standing ready. We get flashbacks to the Cyclops and the moment Odysseus told his men to fight, only for them to die around him. And as a fun little side thing, we actually get a shot of the sheep that started it all, with just a fun, quirky little arrow embedded into it. We then turn from red, the primary colour of the Cyclops saga, to pink, as Circe shows up on screen, as we get reminded of everything that happened in her saga, as we see the pigs and the Chimera versus Cyclops fight just for a moment, which gives us these incredible, almost Western-style stare-downs between Circe and Odysseus before the main clash which leads to Odysseus' victory, which fades into a deep blue as we enter the Ocean Saga with a splash, as a body comes crashing down into the water, as we pan up to Poseidon lording over Odysseus and his ship, as we see more waves presented as these shadowy figures come crashing down. We leave the Ocean Saga with a medium shot of Odysseus turning to the left before his eye glows yellow to be match cut into the Trojan horse of the Troy Saga. And we are now back to where it all started, with the yellows and oranges at the bottom of the screen and the blues at the top that so represent this saga. We get this overview of Troy from Odysseus' perspective upon the wall which started all of this, looking into the yellows of the flames as we cut to them just hovering at the bottom of the screen, slowly zooming in closer and closer to Odysseus as the palette shifts more blue. Finishing off in the same pose as the start of the animatic, with Odysseus looking down, still ashamed. And it's in this final animatic, expertly crafted by Drawing Angie, where we see the meanings of these colours come to their climax. We see Odysseus, fearful in blue, thinking about everything that he has done, but as the song builds and builds, he steadies himself. He accepts all that he has lost, but he still knows that he has to get home. So he locks away fear and regret as the colour palette shifts into this deep red that is used to represent the Cyclops saga, that is used to represent monsters.
So this is it. After so many concept albums and snippets of songs, we finally made it. Act 1 is fully formed. And it is starting to dawn on us that Epic the Musical is now basically halfway released. The first video we made about Epic the Musical was titled The Greatest Musical That Doesn't Exist, but now, as we've come to the end of Act 1, it's on its way to fully taking form, and I don't know what's going to be coming next, and I cannot lie to you, I am extremely excited about it. We have seen Odysseus' journey all the way back from when we were obsessing over the song Just a Man and Warrior of the Mind, all the way up to now, to to monster, where Odysseus has learned that, in the immortal words of Ron Swanson, you can't half-ass two things, just whole-ass one thing. And even though we're at the halfway point, we still don't know what the final piece will take form in. We don't know what medium we're going to get, Epic, the musical. But for now, all I can say is, wow. The music talent, the performers, the singers, the incredibly talented animatic artists, who, all of them that have been featured in our videos and Jorge's videos and everything across, just list them all here. Whether they be featured on the watch parties or independently on YouTube, they are all incredible. And they leave us speechless every single time. Jorge Rivera-Herrans, thank you for watching our previous video. It means the world to us. And from myself and Brandon, thank you so much for creating this amazing retelling of the Odyssey that has gone above and beyond and truly become a thing of your own that you've created. And now the two of us can't wait to see what's going to be in the Thunder Saga, with those two hidden mysterious songs that'll be starting off Act 2. Jorge Rivera-Herrans, you deserve every greatness that comes your way because of this project. I know for one, the Underworld Saga had us bawling.
This life is amazing when you breathe with the